Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Amazing Race Rewind podcast, the podcast where we rewind back in time to watch the earliest seasons of The Amazing Race for the first time. My name is Andrew.
And I'm Jill.
And we are back, baby, from our summer hiatus. If you're listening in real time, as the episodes are coming out, you may have noticed that we were gone for a long time, but we're back.
I will say, it's not like we didn't warn you. We may have promised this episode 4 months ago, but we told you about the break, and you know what? The episode is here now. So
it's here now. The break just might have come a little bit faster than some of us were expecting, but we're back. We're so back.
We are, and we're ready to talk about as well. Hopefully, it'll still be fresh in our minds, but we are doing the deep dive for season 2.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to do the deep dive because we're a little bit more removed. We're like 4 months removed from watching this, so some of the things might be a little bit blurry, but we'll do our best. But we'll have like a little bit of a hindsight going into it.
We will. I'm worried though that I'm going to start talking about something, and then you're going to be like, "No, Jill, that was season 1."
Yeah. Well, we're not going to do that because we know our stuff here at the Amazing Race Rewind. But Jill, do you want to let us know what the Deep Dive podcast is all about?
Yeah, sure. So, the Deep Dive is where, after we finish a season of The Amazing Race, we really dig into any of the behind-the-scenes stuff or the post-show stuff that could be relevant. So, where teams are, what they're doing, maybe how The Amazing Race changed their lives, and then also maybe behind-the-scenes, production-wise, things that happened on the show. So, things that never made it into the cut, things that maybe had to be altered, that were never shown, or just drama, maybe. You never know.
Yeah. So we've combed through the annals of the internet and have sifted through some prehistoric documents of 2002 to bring you everything you need to know.
Annals?
Yeah, I like that word.
Is that an actual word?
But it's
it
like
sounds like you mixed
historical
avenues.
What?
Oh, I thought you were trying to say like canal or avenue together. I thought you were trying to say like combed through like the streets. You were trying to make an analogy for the streets.
Well, that too. We did comb through the harrowed streets of The Amazing Race season 2. Not harrowed, hallowed, I meant to say. And we're going to bring you everything you need to know about season 2.
That indeed.
And if we missed anything, if you have any additional information about the season, you can email us at amazingracerewind@gmail.com because we like to know everything.
We love the insider info.
Okay.
We should just get right into it?
Yeah. So I think we should just start with a little bit of a general discussion, like overall thoughts and opinions on the season, now that we're 4 months removed from it. So
yes.
My lasting impression of this season was that it was overall better TV than the first season. Like, it was better produced, it had better tasks. But I think from what I remember, it had a lot more negative energy and toxicity than the first season.
I would agree on all the points you made, especially the one about better TV. Obviously, they had done this before. They knew how to run the show better. They knew what kind of difficulties would arise. But to speak to your point about the negative energy, I think a lot of that came from there was a lot more characterization. People were kind of put into roles in the edit, and some of those characters that were quote-unquote created weren't necessarily positive.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we did have that season 1, but I think it was more of the season 1 characters, except just like all the negative aspects of it, and it was very much exacerbated.
And I think season 1 as well, it was 1 or 2 teams that kind of carried the brunt of it. And not to say that that wasn't the case here. Obviously, there were a couple teams here who really got the negative edit, but it just seemed that energy penetrated a lot of the rest of a lot of the other teams' kind of airtime.
Yeah, I mean, to me, at like nearing the end, the only ray of light we had was Oswald and Danny, and they just like kind of stuck to themselves. They didn't really interact with a lot of the other teams, but it was just like so incredibly competitive and tense, and affected the viewing experience to me.
It did. And again, this is not to say it was a bad season. It was good.
Yeah.
There were some good tasks, good locations, but it just felt like the producers and the showrunners and everyone involved in the show, the editors especially, took the first season, they understood now what they were dealing with and just dialed it up in terms of making good TV.
Yes, yeah, and I love drama. I love toxicity sometimes, but this was too much. It was way too much overall negative and harmful behavior.
Yeah,
So I think, well, I actually did enjoy the season. It was just like getting to be a little bit much at the end, but
I would agree. Yeah.
yeah, I would say I'm looking at season one of being a little bit more fondly than this one.
Season one, just a little more positive, a little more laid back, I guess would be a good way to put it.
Yeah, overall, I think season one it felt a lot more wholesome, but I would say season two had some like it definitely had more TV moments. Like it had the most insane finish in probably any Amazing Race season.
Oh, easily. It was
history.
so good. It was so good.
Like the whole final 20-minute sequence of like Will trying to throw Chris and Alex off, and like the amount of anxiety that was going on in that moment.
It was so anxiety inducing.
Yeah, and then like Alex and Chris like caught up to Tara and Will, but Tara and Will got to the pit stop first, but then ended up losing to Chris and Alex in a foot race. It was making the feek.
Yeah, it was, again, good TV. And I mean, looking at a sequence like that, the contestants are just giving it to the production people and everyone involved. You know, this is not something that is incited by the show or its planning or anything. This is purely because one of the contestants happened to be local to the San Francisco area and was able to kind of do this whole let's throw them off, let's create this moment, and it worked.
And it was just like such a human moment of pure panic of I need like I don't know what to do. We need to throw them off, and they're just completely overthinking the situation.
Entirely. Yeah.
And I think it's like relatable in some ways because I feel like we've all had some moments like that before in our lives.
I'm excited for us to continue this podcast because we will get to see so many other finales, and maybe I'm speaking too soon, but I even think of The Amazing Race Canada, and no finale has felt that high stakes.
No.
You know, I think most of the time you get to a certain point in the final episode and you think, yeah, it's going to be this team, they've got a lead, or okay, it's pretty safe. But it was yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And on the note of the production taking a step forward and like the show evolving, I mean, we had some actual real tasks and detours this season as opposed to season one. And I think overall the team seemed more prepared. Like the camera work was a lot better. It was much easier to follow as opposed to season one. And I feel like moving forward, I think season three is going to be where they like are a fully formed show.
I was going to say too, I think like a couple of the emails we've received or a couple of people we've talked to, I guess, have said that season 3 is pretty good and it will, I think, be one of the ones to watch. So I'm excited.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to season 3, especially after our little hiatus.
Exactly, yes. I had a hole in my heart. I need The Amazing Race Rewind.
Yeah, we've had time to step back and reflect on this show and what it means to us, and we're coming back full force.
Yes.
For season 3. Now, something that was current news or that was affecting like world travel at the time of filming this. So it aired in 2002, but do you know when they were filming?
It would have been
early 2002.
Yeah, like maybe late 2001, early 2002.
Yeah. So this was post 9/11, and there was a lot of changes that were made to the way that teams would travel.
There's also, just I should add, there was a lot of speculation of whether the show would even go forward. Or as we did with the last deep dive, we'll link everything we reference, everything we talk about in the description box. And there was a couple news articles talking about whether the show would be feasible with air travel restrictions, whether it would be a good idea, whether they should even renew the show. So the fact that they got it off the ground for season 2 was something. And then to go into what you're saying, Andrew.
Yeah, no, but like you were saying, there was an article that we found that the whole thesis statement was that The Amazing Race should not be happening at this time. Like the last thing that we need is a bunch of ignorant Americans running around the world. Like everybody should just be staying home during this trying time and stuff like that. But for the actual implications that this event had on the race, So there were times where there would just be like some random inspections in airport lines that would delay some teams as they were trying to board planes. And then like some locations were just completely off the table for connecting flights. So that would also affect.
Well, even too, I mean, they dropped Europe completely as a destination for anything. I don't think they even have a. Is there even any connecting flights that went through Europe in this season?
I don't know the connecting flights, but it was.
But I don't think there even was. I think it was all Asia, South America, Africa,
Australia. Yeah, it was quite confounding that they didn't go to Europe at all.
Yeah, which is, and just to kind of speak forward a little bit, I think we're going to see a lot more of that in season 3. I would think maybe.
I would think so too. But yeah, just like the whole security thing, and there were just so many factors at the airport that the producers could not control that affected teams, and that was something that also just wasn't shown on the show because that's not something that they would really want to highlight on the show. Of like team, like let's say like Taryn Will gets pulled out of an airport line to get randomly searched while Blake and Paige get to go ahead.
Exactly, yeah. If you go and listen to the season 1 deep dive, there we kind of covered the inception of the show, the planning and logistics that happened before it was even filming. So that one is a lot longer in terms of if you're looking to hear about the production, the behind the scenes. Obviously, this is kind of one of the only major behind the scenes changes that they had to deal with prior to season 2. There were changes in the production of the show, which we mentioned before, you know, the tasks were better, the flights were more organized in the season and all that.
Yeah.
But if you want to hear about the creation of the show, go to season 1. But I think now are we just going to get into the teams now? We'll talk about each of the teams and where they're at.
Yeah, let's get into the cast. I just want to talk about the cast, like generally speaking, to start. So I pulled up the 2 casts from season 1 and season 2 and just did like a little comparison. And there are some really interesting parallels that were going on here. Like,
I am interested to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. So the top 2 teams of both seasons are literally the exact same archetypes, with Chris and Alex and Rob and Brennan both being like the Alpha Bros friends, and they're both probably of similar ages. And then the team who plays second both being a separated couple.
It is interesting how that played out.
And then also, both fourth place teams, Kevin and Drew and Oswald and Danny, I would say they were both seen as like the comic relief team. They weren't really like, they were more of like side characters. They weren't in a main alliance, or they weren't ever front runners, but they were always supporting characters within the show, I would say.
Yeah, wow. I'm sorry, I just thought back about the Kevin and Drew show and wow.
No, we're not doing that again. If you want to hear about the Kevin and Drew show, go to season 1 deep dive. I got into that there, but
anyway, any others?
And then the other comparisons, which are like a little bit more loose, I drew between Nancy and Emily and Deidre and Hillary. Obviously, we didn't see much of Deidre and Hillary, but like
I don't know if that's just kind of the same relationship between the 2 teammates.
Yeah, well, and like Hillary was like a little bit more wild, and like that was the same with Emily, and then the others were like Nancy and Deidre were more tame. But yeah. But I would say overall there were a lot like more big personalities that shone through the screen more on season 2 than season 1.
I know I've said this before, but people knew how to get airtime if they wanted it.
Yeah.
And producers knew how
Gary and Dave.
Who we will talk about as well.
Begrudgingly. But did you have any overall general opinions on the cast?
Nothing that we kind of haven't already said, just obviously, you know, this cast the season 1 cast coming in had no idea what show they were gonna, they had no idea what they were walking into in general. I mean, they brought frying pans, they brought tents. Here the teams knew what to expect, they had a reference, so I think, you know, they were able to devote more energy into the TV aspect and less of the show survival. Not that it's a survival show, but
yeah,
you know what I mean.
It was a lot less about them figuring it out and more about their like the dynamics as teams and
exactly
them as characters. But this season did introduce like a couple new relationships that would become integral to pretty much every season, being the twins. There's always a twin team every season.
Yeah.
And then there weren't any siblings on season 1 either.
No, that's... Really?
Yeah.
Goodness.
Which is kind of crazy. It was
That
season
is
one
the-
was pretty much just like a couple's season.
That's true. Now that I'm going through the teams in my head, yeah. But I think it's
Yeah.
just so natural to assume that there was a sibling team. Wow. Anyway, so I think the best way for us to go through the teams is we're just going to start with, gotta go in chronological order of who was eliminated. I'll be honest, it felt like there was a good amount of information for the teams in season 1 and where they're at now or what they've done or they've maybe given an interview about the race. There was significantly less stuff for season,
Yeah.
like a significant amount, fewer interviews or anything about the teams in season 2. So we did what we can.
Yeah,
But-
we are grave diggers. We were hacking away at the grave of season 2 and trying to see what we could uncover.
And yeah, so should we just get right into it?
We'll get right into it with the first team eliminated, Deidre and Hillary. What do you have to say about them?
Again, and I know we said this when they were eliminated, but that first team out, you kind of never really get to know them long enough to feel for them or to see them. I don't know. And for that reason, I don't have any strong feelings about them. Not in a negative way. Just yeah, they weren't around long enough. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're nice people. The only things that I could really find online about them is that a little piece of trivia, if you can call it this, is that in the first episode, Deidre's name is spelled Deidre.
Yeah.
But in the third episode, it's spelled Diedre. So, and that's up for debate.
Earth
What do you guys
shattering.
think? How do you think her name is spelled? That's the kind of substance that we have on them.
Yeah, the only other thing I could find was that as of now, apparently, or as of this article from Cinemaholic, which again, we will link everything down below. This was 2023. It says one of them lives in New York and the other lives in Tampa. That's about
I'm
it.
sure they're doing well in their respective cities.
Yeah, wish them all the best.
Next up, Hope and Norm. Boring.
I found nothing on them. Absolutely nothing.
Like, they're so painfully normal and innocuous. They're just not great television.
Like, good for them, but yeah, it's like happy. What did they say? Like, happy normal people don't make good TV, or you don't write movies about happy people with good lives.
No. And this made me think of how they even got through the process. But I found the answer.
Oh.
So, if you are familiar with the show Survivor, which some of our viewers may be, they're friends with Tina Wesson, who is actually the winner of the second season of Survivor. And if you don't know, Survivor, The Amazing Race are both CBS shows, and they have like similar casting teams. So she actually helped them get cast.
Interesting.
So they're a little, nepotism babies here. And that makes sense to me because they were a bore. And like, I don't know how they would have made it through the casting process.
They're nepo babies.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know what? If you can take anything from that, connections will take you a
really-
long way.
They really do. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have any details about where they're at life. Hope they're doing well.
Yeah. Me too.
Next, we have. Well, I'm going to let you talk about this next team. I feel like you would really appreciate that.
The Gutsy Grannies. Icons, legends. They were the moment, and they still are the moment. I think it's truly incredible that we were able to get them for 3 whole episodes, considering how they were almost out episode 1 and 2. They really kept us on the edge of our seats. They gave us great reactions to them surviving elimination twice in a row, and they were just love and light.
And they were beloved by all the teams.
Yeah. So I found this little tidbit from their pre-race interview from the CBS website.
Ooh.
So teams, like, they list their strengths for like and what they think they're going to bring to the team. So Peggy said, "Oh, I have a good memory," and Claire says, "Oh, I can yodel." That's her strength. And then later on in the interview, they flipped it. So they asked like they asked Peggy what she thought Claire's strength was. And Peggy says, "Claire is very intelligent, well-traveled, and very well-read. She can also yodel." So
Imagine, wow.
write
like,
that down.
I just can't imagine something like that being such a huge part. Like, it's such a huge part of someone's personality that when you're asked to think of their strengths, you would say yodeling.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine if you were asked about my strengths, you would be like, oh, she can play the saxophone.
She can play the saxophone. Yeah, because that's going to be useful. Hey, yodeling might have come up if they went to the Sydney Opera House and did the opera singing challenge that I proposed last season.
Opera singing is not
that's
yodeling.
applicable, but
Singing,
I'm sure there's some transferable skills there.
it's like yodeling's good if you need to herd the goats or something off the mountainside, but
Okay, well, that could have been on there too. Who knows?
exactly.
But anyway, they're both still alive at the time of the recording of this podcast. In 2024, Peggy is 85 and Claire is 88.
And I just found an article that said they're settled down and enjoying their life and, yeah, making the best of it.
Making the best of it, yeah.
Even though they didn't win the Amazing Race, they are still living and loving life.
Yeah, and they're still gutsy, I'm sure.
I don't doubt it.
Moving to the first ever twin team, who was our friend of the podcast, Martine's favorite team, if you'll remember, from season 2, episode 2, Shola and Doyene.
Yeah, and actually, I found quite a bit about. I couldn't even write in my notes here everything I found about them because
good.
they've become quite noted public and motivational speakers.
Do you know what kind of speaking they do?
Public and motivational.
Of the motivational variety. Okay, sure. So what I found from then is that actually Doyene was featured in the commercials for Microsoft's Windows 10.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they had a rough go on this race. They had really bad luck. I think they had potential to do very well if it weren't for them like getting their foot run over and like dislocating their knee and everything, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, no, that was painful. Unfortunately, like that's not the way you want to go out of the race. I'll just say, if you're gonna go out of the race, you want it to be because of just something that's not physically inhibiting you from, like, if you get sick or if someone else causes your injury.
Yeah, that's the words. Because like literally a taxi driver ran over his foot. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I feel bad because I do think they would have gone a lot further if they didn't have the injuries holding them back, but...
Yeah, but then again, I also wasn't really sad to lose them. I didn't really think they brought much to the season.
They were, as we said, were too normal to make good TV.
No, exactly. Unlike some other people who made it a lot farther.
Yes.
And fun fact about them, they're the first all-male team on the show who was eliminated before the Final Four.
Really? Well, I guess when you say first and there's only been 2 seasons, the bar is very high.
But still.
Yeah. Interesting fact, nonetheless.
Yeah. So...
Cindy and Russell.
Cindy and Russell. What do you have to say about them?
I'll be honest, again, very normal team, therefore kind of forgetful, nothing that really stands out in my memory. All I could really find on them is it just sounds like they're living a quaint, quiet, and happy life. But yeah, I don't really have nothing notable that stuck out about, nothing notable that stuck out about them. I don't know, you?
Yeah, they were also kind of a dud to me. They didn't really have much going on, which I think was kind of apparent since like the only thing that editors really latched onto them was their religious affiliations, and they just seemed kind of like one note in that vein. They weren't really a multifaceted team, but they did actually give a pretty good interview after the season that I found, giving like some good information about the race. Russell said that they got a total of about 8 hours of sleep in total during the first 5 days.
Oh my gosh.
Which I don't think I would be able to deal with that. Because if I don't get my 8 hours, I'm no longer human.
Well, that's something you need to work on for the race.
How do you work on that?
I don't know. Learn to sleep under stressful situations?
I guess so.
Or just learn to sleep anywhere, I guess. I think that's the key.
Yeah, so that my sleep would be my one concern going on the race, and then the other one for me would be eating. I'm like very high maintenance with eating. Like if I'm not well fed and well rested, I'm functioning at 20%.
I agree with you on food. I think you and I on the race would just constantly have a bag of like Gorp in our back pocket.
A bag of Gorp. But with food, he said that they pretty much just lived on protein bars the whole time. Like they never really ate
so
meals.
Much sugar. That's so much sugar. Ugh. That's just gross.
Oh, and production-wise, this was interesting. Russell said that they had to sign $10 million confidentiality agreements upon being cast on the show.
Wow.
Yeah, like I knew there would be some like forms or like confidentiality things that they'd have to sign, but I didn't realize it would be to the extent of $10 million.
Wow. That's, yeah. I didn't think that
Yeah.
in 2002 CBS valued The Amazing Race as worth $10 million of secrets
Well,
leaking.
they did. Well, they did. They were willing to charge people $10 million if things leaked.
I don't think it's called charged, Andrew. I think it's called
Well-
sued.
Okay, well, whatever.
But yeah, I don't really have anything else to add about them.
Neither do I. But yeah, that article will be linked if you want to see what Cindy and Russell had to say about the race. So that's all well and good. And Mary and Peach.
You know what? They did give a little more entertainment value, having kind of one sister's really outgoing, really ambitious, really daring, and the other prefers the comforts of home. They, of course, gave us that golden moment where you, and I believe it was Ashley, who was on the podcast at the time, misunderstood and thought that it was, you were praising her for having a bowel movement.
Yeah.
And I had to gently correct you and say, no. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about the fact that she was able to force herself to use a public washroom.
Which is absurd.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed them this season. I thought their banter killed me. Like some
Were
of their
they
quotes,
the ones who had you're like gagging after drinking some sort of tea in an alley?
Yeah, that was Peach. Peach fed us well. Like the breakdown on the bus, her in the Bat Cave.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and then her just
Sorry.
being
I didn't get that. The internet isn't reachable.
sorry.
All right. Well, anyway.
Oh yeah, and the fact that they just like low-key quit and just went for dinner instead.
Yeah, did we talk about that? Because you have some interesting stories about, I know you were telling me this in person.
Yeah. Yeah, so I had found that Mary and Peach, they actually refused to check in Hong Kong.
They didn't just go to
because-
dinner.
No.
I think we see the dinner, but there's a lot more to it.
They flat out refused to check in because they wanted to extend their vacation for as long as possible. So, like, everybody had checked in, and Mary and Peach are just, like, merrily on their way in Hong Kong trying to just, like, see the city and be tourists, essentially. Meanwhile, the whole, like, production crew, I don't know if you remember, but the pit stop that episode was on a boat. So, like, many members of the crew were getting seasick just waiting for Mary and Peach to come to the pit stop, but they just refused.
Which, I mean,
they took advantage of their situation, I suppose.
but I mean, they, like, is there some sort of Amazing Race rule that says after you're eliminated, you have to be immediately flown home? Like, could they not have just seen the city the next day?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that worked, but I think they were just over it, and they were maybe being a little bit, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Petty?
Maybe, yeah. They just, like, didn't really care.
I mean, good for
at that
them,
point.
but
But yeah, they did give us some good quotes of, like, I think it was the first episode when they were like, I don't even like you, or like at the airport when there was like the close up of one of them just like leaning against a wall with their head down, and the other one, the camera pans over to the other one, and she goes, she's losing it.
iconic.
They were a lot of fun to me.
I
Although-
really enjoyed them.
Yeah, so did I. Although the quitting thing wasn't really great.
You're not a
I
quitter,
conf-
though.
Because I think in this race, you don't know if what's
That
going
is
on with
true.
the other teams. You could think that you're so far behind, but like what happened with the Gutsy Grannies, like they thought they were in last 2 times, but they kept going and then they prevailed.
This is true, yeah.
But yeah, do you have any information on them postseason?
Again, similar to other teams, they're very private. Like they don't post anything online. They don't have social media accounts that I could find, but there was a little tidbit somewhere that said they just both went on to raise their families, but keep the rest of their lives private. So
Yeah.
it sounds like, yeah, they're both have kids, both doing well.
Yeah.
And now we get to good old Itchy and Scratchy,
Well.
Gary and Dave.
Okay, I have to say, when I was making my notes, I was like cruising along, typing away, like giving my opinions on everybody. And then as soon as I realized I was at this team, I just like filled with dread. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, there's something so fundamental within me that disagrees with Gary and Dave.
So for those of you who may have forgotten, or just maybe you're joining us for the first time, when we were first introduced to Gary and Dave, the relationship title that we were given for the two of them is former roommates. Not friends, not enemies, not old acquaintances, former roommates.
Yeah, and I think that just kind of sums them up, because I think with them putting down former roommates, I think it's them trying to be like funny and quirky, but the joke's not landing. I think it's just ridiculous.
Oswald did a podcast episode, which again we will link, and I will say was a really great podcast, covered a lot of things, and he added that first off, Oswald and Danny, I guess, were the ones to name Itchy and Scratchy, and my notes say and vice versa, so I assume they gave them Itchy and Scratchy were the ones who named them Cha Cha Cha. But yes, Gary and Dave were comedy writers, is the point of my long tangent there.
Not good ones.
But they were comedy writers, and you can kind of see that in some of the lines they gave us, some of the bits. You're going down with the iconic finger point. What are some other good Gary and Dave quotes? Throw them out here. Have you mentally blocked these?
Maybe. There's the one where like Dave was trying to talk to Gary, and Gary was like, I don't want to hear it. Just send me an email.
Of course, yeah. Send me an email.
And when they were like, oh yeah, they were doing well at one point. They're like, oh yeah, the people call us the Three Stooges. What are the names of the Three Stooges?
Something and Mo.
Yeah, something and Mo. But it's like, we got the Mo in us. The momentum. Crickets.
Crickets for Gary. We were going to get that put on hats. I was trying to remember what we were going to put on hats. I was just scrolling up in my notes, and it was crickets for Gary. That would be so cute, though, with little crickets on the side.
Little crickets.
This will be your Christmas gift this year.
I don't think I want to sport anything that relates to this team. They didn't do much for me. They said in their preseason interviews that the reason why they applied to the show is that they were, quote, running out of unemployment checks.
Okay. Well, gotta do what you gotta do to survive. Respect.
Yeah. See, that's not funny. They just need to, like, try something different. Their shtick got stale after episode 2. But I do hate to say that they were actually decent racers. Like, they were at the front of the pack for a decent amount.
Yeah, they were never in a super dangerous position for a long time. And you know what? As much as you hate them, they made quote-unquote good TV because they knew how to bring personality.
Yeah, they gave us something to talk about.
That they did.
Hope and Norm. But since then, Dave has actually written a book and is currently an editor for a magazine.
Yeah, and it says, Dave had a quite successful, I'm quoting this article directly, successful book. So, yeah, not
so
just any book, successful book.
Meanwhile, the only thing I could find was from Gary was his Instagram page, and his bio is this. Quote, being awesome, from the mean streets of Hyde Park to the cruel schools of Highland Park to the boardwalks of Venice Beach to the dog parks of DC. And to me, that checks out. Yeah,
I found that Gary is, and again, this information is current to the Cinemaholic article, which was 2023. Don't know why I said it like that. He's a freelance creative director in DC.
Okay, so good for him.
Good for him.
You know what? They weren't for me in the context of The Amazing Race, but I wish them well.
Exactly.
But just not on this show, just somewhere else. Okay, moving to a absolute highlight team from this season, Danny and Oswald.
Yes. So I think, and I again mentioned, Oswald did a podcast episode that was really great. Mm-hmm. What do you want to do? You want to talk about how they got into the show first? Because it's kind of different than any of the other teams.
Yeah, so this is quite interesting. So I guess the way that they used to cast for the show is they would have a bunch of casting directors, and the casting directors were actually paid for how many tapes they received. So there was this casting director just like hanging outside of a movie theater, and Oswald and Danny were walking out of a movie theater, and a casting director approached them saying that you guys should apply for this show. And then they made a tape, and then the rest was history.
Yeah, and this is also something that Oswald added is the characterization of them, cha-cha-cha, they're from Miami. But Oswald, right off the bat, wasn't even in Miami. He was living in New York and I guess was visiting Danny in Miami at the time. But yeah, he was at that point already in New York.
Yeah, I listened to a podcast with Oswald as well, and he gave a couple interesting tidbits, one of which were that one time they went out bar hopping and then just got a bunch of locals to buy drinks for them.
Yes, he did say that.
Yeah. What did you get on him?
Well, I guess there's a couple of rules made because of them. One of which I guess stuck, was because of them, teams now, you cannot accept a ride from a non-commercial vehicle. And I can't quite remember what the instance was where they did that, but that was a rule that was created because of them. Obviously, they brought us Fern being a term now used in the Amazing Race fandom. Iconic. But also just Fern, the wonderful, wonderful individual who showed them around the city and helped them. We will add, too, Oswald and Danny came back for season 11, which was kind of the All-Stars season. And Oswald said that they wanted to be more competitive in season 11. So I didn't look into any of that because I don't want any spoilers.
Nope.
But we will be... I'm excited to see them again in season 11.
Yes, me as well, and their development as a team. Because on this season, they were far from competitive. They took like the most unconventional strategy that I've ever seen, where they're just going to like be as lackadaisical as possible and stay as far away from the pack. It was questionable at best, but it seemed to serve them quite well. They did end up winning 3 legs.
What is with the terms you're using today? Like, sorry, back up. What was that? Lackadaisical?
Yeah, like lackadaisy. We move. So they did win 3 legs, which was quite absurd to me because I don't remember them being that strong.
I mean, it's they played the long game. They really did.
Somehow, yeah. And it was a very refreshing presence, like we said before. I think they were like a really vital team to the season. I think if we didn't have them, the season would have suffered for it.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like you said, they kind of at the end there were especially the light, and they were, somewhat the comic relief. I will add that Oswald talked about, he said that he loved Mary and Peach as a team. They were just great people, and he still talks to Mary. And he also said that Tara, he said he loved her as well. She was great. And that what you saw on TV about her and kind of the edit personality that her and Will were, or her specifically, that she was given was not adequate at all.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish, because we'll get to this, but I didn't find really anything at all about Tara and Will. I don't think I wasn't able to find any interviews that they gave. So I think they probably came out of this experience feeling very negatively about it.
Rightfully so, I'll add, but we'll get to them in just a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, so Danny and Oswald, they've lost touch. Not negatively, just they're living in different cities, but currently they have lost touch. Oswald is a founder of a multimedia marketing company living in New York. And Danny is a senior consultant still living in Miami and he's a senior consultant for a legal solutions company. So they're doing well.
Okay. Well, thank you, Danny and Oswald, for all you brought to The Amazing Race Season 2. And now we'll talk about maybe the most successful team to come out of The Amazing Race, like financially and business-wise.
Yeah.
Blake and Paige.
You will remember back in Season 1, Episode 5, I want to say, or Season 2, Episode 5, Ashley dropped a little bit of lore that Blake was the founder of Tom's Shoes.
Yeah, which were everywhere in like 2012. However, I haven't seen a pair of Tom's shoes in a very long time.
No, they were definitely a 2010s trend. I had a pair, which is saying something. But yeah, they've dropped off the face of the earth, really.
Yeah, but however, I found that he ended up selling the company in 2014 and gained $300 million in doing so. So to Blake, if you're listening to the Humble Amazing Race Rewind podcast, we love you. We could use a small donation. Anything will help. Please, we're shaking the cup.
We are greatly supportive of your time on The Amazing Race, and we think you're a great role model.
Okay. Additionally, Paige is the founder of the clothing chain called Aviator Nation, which is like vaguely familiar to me.
It also seems to be doing very, very well.
Yeah, it is currently worth, I don't know if it's current, but when I searched it up, it is worth through $380 million. So
Fairly successful.
they're indescribably successful, yeah.
Yeah. I will add to what you said about Blake. After selling Tom's Shoes, he co-founded a company called Made For, which is an online wellness platform. And in 2020, he appeared as an investor on Shark Tank. He was a shark.
Yeah, I did see that too. I want to see him as a shark.
I feel like he just looks
cool.
too nice to be a shark, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
He doesn't really live up to the name.
the sharks need to be intimidating people, and he just looks too nice.
But the events of the show and like the experience of The Amazing Race inspired him to create the company of Tom's. And I think the way the business model was like a portion of the, or it was like when you buy a pair of Tom's, you're like also buying a pair of shoes for a child in need. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
arguably too, his time on The Amazing Race had one of the biggest lasting impacts probably on his life.
And probably on the
Indirectly and
lives of
directly.
several others. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. But onto them as a team. I thought they were a really great team. I think we were both rooting for them at the end. And I think they did a lot to move the show forward in terms of strategy and their unwillingness to give up and like all their different like unconventional outside of the box tactics.
Yes, and they did all this well. They maintained character and personality, but not so much that they were given a really bad edit or given a really extreme kind of persona. They managed to balance appearing likable and also doing really well.
Yeah, like I think they should have been eliminated at several points, but they were able to recover from it. Like in I think this was leg 2 where there was a detour between the hang gliding and metal detecting when they were supposed to like sleep and like during the night, but they went and attempted to rent their own metal detectors to do the task before everybody else.
No, exactly.
It's like nobody else was thinking of that at the time.
Oh, I know. And correct me if I'm wrong. Were they the ones who lost their wallet?
And they were the ones who lost their wallet and then had to beg for money.
They really were an exemplary team and showed what it means to do whatever it takes on The Amazing Race.
Yeah, and I think they killed it. Although they did finish third.
But you know what? They finished third in the race, but when you're looking at post-life success... Post-life, oh my gosh, post-race.
Post-race.
Post-life
the race is
success.
life. Yeah. Once the race is over, your life is over. But they are 2 of 3 contestants from the season to have their own Wikipedia page.
That is true.
Do you know who the third is?
Would it be Alex?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Alex. But we'll get to him and his accomplishments right after we go to the most controversial team of the race, which is Tara and Will.
Yes. I'll just say straight off the bat, there's, as you kind of mentioned, there's nothing about them post-race. I can understand that they were probably not happy with how they were portrayed and what was shown. And I'd say kudos to them for not, choosing to just back off and not fight against this or whatever. But all that is known is that they proceeded with the divorce but remained business partners for their company Function, spelled with a K, Funktion, which I believe is furniture.
Yes. Yeah, they were furniture business partners. But actually, the producers found out when they were doing their background checks and stuff that Tara and Will were actually legally married at the time. Because Tara and Will had split only a couple weeks after their wedding, and they never handed in their marriage papers, so they thought that they were like technically never married in the first place. However, the monk who officiated their wedding did turn in their wedding papers, so they were actually married, like legally married the whole time.
Oh, wow. Well, but I mean, they just said they were separated at the time, right? They didn't say they were divorced.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
But overall, like, despite their dysfunction and their constant bickering, they were actually really great racers. And they had the highest average placement of the season with a 2.46, which, drawing parallels to season 1, Frank and Margarita also had the highest average placement of their season. So
Obviously, something about that dynamic works.
it works. It works somehow. So yeah, like you said, they didn't really do much like media-wise postseason. However, I did find this TV Guide article that they both interviewed for, and they still seem to be quite vitriolic toward one another. If you will let me
Oh,
read this excerpt from 2002. So
but this is 2002. I mean, this is fresh off the race.
this was directly after.
This isn't like 10 years post.
No.
Okay.
So it starts with, quote, "I truly wanted to get back together with her," says Will, who co-owns a furniture business with Tara. The two bickered their way to second place while Tara cozied up to Alex, one of the $1 million winners. Quote, "We were categorized as a screaming, angry couple," says Will, who admits that off-camera he called Lynch a bee. But only, quote, "when she called me stupid and an idiot." Unhappy with the outcome, he blames Tara. "She wanted to make friends, I wanted to win the money. It was a race to change my life, be my meal ticket, my partner kissing another guy instead of going over strategy with me." And then they bring Alex in, and Alex says she finally stuck up for herself. That now, says Tara's boyfriend. Yeah. "Chris and I got fed up with how he treated Tara. The producers told us if we hit him, we're out of the race. So I said, forget it. I'm going to take his girl." But Will gives the relationship just a few months, quote, "until the fame goes away."
Wow.
So there was some drama there post-season.
I will say, on all fronts, understandable if I can. You know, obviously, to go on a race with someone and they start cozying up to someone else is not ideal. It's unfair. Like, it is unfair to that person, but at the same time, you know, if there are issues, yeah, you're allowed to do what you want, but understand that what you do will be put on TV.
Yeah. So that was a little juicy excerpt that I thought was relevant. Do you have anything to cap off Tara and Will here?
Just to clarify one of the points you made in what you just read there, the excerpt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Alex said that, yes, he and Tara did date for about, he said
Yes.
3 to 6 months, which is a kind of a weird timeline, but...
Well, Will called it. Will only gave the relationship a few months.
Yeah. But, yeah, no, nothing else really on them.
Okay. And finally,
Yes.
our winners of the season, Chris and Alex.
I will say right off the bat, and I'm quoting Alex in a podcast here, he goes, "Chris and I didn't make great TV," which I think sums them up.
Yeah.
Not that it's an attack on them or anything, but I mean, he knows that they were a little too normal, a little too calm and average to make any sort of good
Yeah.
TV.
Very similar to Rob and Brendan again in that sense.
Exactly. Now, I know we want to talk about them and get in this, but I just mentioned a podcast with Alex called the Not Wikipedia podcast. Not Wikipedia Reality TV Warriors. Let me explain how we found this podcast. So, I am minding my own business one day, and I get a text message from Andrew that says, "You have to listen to this, just the beginning." It's a link. I go, okay. I turn the volume up. I click on the link, and what comes blaring through my screen or my speakers is the most jarring podcast intro I've ever heard. I highly recommend you go click on the link at the bottom because it cracked me up. Do you have any words to say on that podcast intro, Andrew?
Just the intro. Yeah, I was floored. I was speechless. I was going on a nice walk, and then I said, "Okay, I'll click play on this Alex podcast," and it shook me to my core. It's the Amazing Race intro, except it's just like this person screaming the melody.
Yes, so if every time it's the da da da, it's just a scream. And I had it on
Like
2
blood
times,
curdling horror scream.
and I had it on 2 times speed as well. So it just sounded even worse.
Yeah. Well, that's beside the point.
Yes.
Chris and Alex.
Alex gave a great podcast interview. I will say this was a very good interview.
Yes, he's very much still in the community. He's like done a lot in like the reality TV world after the season. So on this podcast, he talked about how they didn't know what the Amazing Race was when they applied, and they actually only found out that they were on the show when the first episode of season 1 was airing.
Yeah, so the casting story goes that they're applying to something that they didn't really know. They had been Alex specifically had been bartending in the Caribbean. He had just quit his job. They shot the VHS tape, and then decided to backpack Europe, and only found out that they had gotten it when they were visiting his parents. I know where they were staying in Switzerland, something like that.
Yeah, and it was quite miraculous because the producers were had to track down where they were and happened to call Alex's parents while Alex just happened to be with them at that time.
No, exactly. It was meant to be.
And Alex also talked about how when he was in his junior year of high school, his parents sent him to Brazil with just $600 cash in his pocket.
Yeah.
And he did a lot of traveling in his childhood.
So he seems very unfazed, and even, now he's had time to think back, but talking about it, it sounds like he went into this very familiar with, or very comfortable, I should say, with the idea of being on your own, going around and figuring it out.
Yeah, exactly. Could you imagine being 16 years old and going to a completely foreign country with $600 cash just, in your pocket?
It would be, I like to think I'm a positive person that can make the best of it, but it would be an experience, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's unfathomable.
Well, and another thing, too, is he said that they each only packed 1 to 2 pairs of pants. Each.
Yeah, they said, I remember that. Talking about how they just, wore the same jeans every single day.
I guess, if you gotta save room for stuff, save room for, make room for food or whatnot, but 1 to 2 pairs of pants, you'd be washing those every day.
Yeah, and, jeans, that's really your pant of choice for The Amazing Race.
What would be your pant of choice?
Well, just, a jogger, or, something more athletic.
That's fair. That, actually, that makes a lot of sense.
But he also said that the Tara and Will alliance actually started on the way to Brazil in leg 1, where Alex was befriending Will, and they made an agreement saying that Alex would help them out in Brazil due to his previous experience in the country. And then Tara and Will said that they would help them out in Southeast Asia and Thailand, since, if you recall, when they were in Thailand, Tara and Will were very pleased because they had done a lot of business in Thailand and were very familiar with that sort of part of the world.
Yes. And also add to that, he gave a lot of good insight into just, some stuff that was going on within the show, little tidbits and that, but also just into his post-race life as well. He says he keeps in touch with Danny. He meets up with Shola and Doyen every once in a while. And him and Brennan are still very close. They live right near each other, and so he says he sees them probably every weekend.
Yeah.
But let's get into some of the juicy details he dropped about the production of the show, I guess. Well, continuing on with that.
The production, I don't really have anything about the production.
Oh, well, so I have one from the one podcast. He said, and I know we've talked about this before, how basically the producers, whatever, take their passports and apply to their visas, and it's hundreds of visas, so they have no idea where they're going. But what I didn't realize is that passports are only picked up again with their bags so when they start and Phil says go, they run to their bags, and that's when they get their passports back. They don't get them before that, or at least at the time this was being filmed. That's how it was done.
Oh, so that's how they do it with the visas.
I assume so,
they don't
yeah.
know. Interesting.
So, exactly. He did drop a little bit of weird lore that apparently Dave became a story editor for the 5th season of The Amazing Race.
Yeah, I did actually see that too, which good for him, I guess.
Yeah, anyway, sorry, that should have been added in the Gary and Dave section.
In the Gary and Dave section. Well, they're getting it now. And just a little off-topic moment, he also mentioned that the sheep herding task when they were in New Zealand was actually at Phil's dad's farm.
So
is that crazy?
Is that Phil's dad in the show?
Oh yeah, and I think Phil's dad was the greeter at the mat for that episode.
Good for Phil. That is.
But I'm not entirely sure about that one. But I do know that Phil had a lot more involvement in the season. For one, he was at the pit stop for every single team that was arriving, and then also he had a lot more to do with the planning of the show and the tasks and the lake design,
which is good for him.
Yeah, it's good to see that he was a lot more involved and integrated within the show.
Yes. All right, because Alex specifically, sorry, has a lot of race related or TV show related stuff post race.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, I'll just add one more thing is he talked about that when he was training for the show in the months leading up to it, when he was on his runs, he would imagine another team ahead of him, and try and beat them or try and keep up with them. And that was how he motivated himself through his workouts. And I just think, how full circle is that?
See, this is what I'm talking. Oh, because of the finale.
Because of the finale, yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of crazy. But this is what I'm talking about with the Amazing Race mindset. How you need to try and figure out how to incorporate this into your life of just thinking that you're in the Amazing Race and that this is how to get through things.
If we ever go on, I know that you will come off of it. Even if we don't win, you'll come off of it and you will write a book. It'll be like the Amazing Race mindset.
The Amazing Race mindset. It's real, you guys. It's real.
Tried, tested, and proved.
So, as we alluded to before, Alex had quite the prolific career in TV. And one thing that I want to highlight is that he co-created a show called Around the World for Free with someone named Zolt Luca and Burton Roberts from Survivor Pearl Islands, if you're familiar with Survivor. But this show featured Alex and the co-creator Zolt traveling around the world with no money, hence Around the World for Free, and only relying on the kindness of locals to get around, which to me, this is like an extremely interesting and gripping concept.
It kind of ties into what he was saying before with, being sent to Brazil at 16 with $600 in his pocket. Obviously, this is something that he has done before and wanted to kind of maybe try again. But to set that up for yourself to kind of make a statement is insane.
No, absolutely. And like turning it into, it was a web series, and there were 155 webisodes in total. Sorry.
What? That's killing you.
Webisodes. It's like episodes, but webisodes.
Have you never heard that before?
I don't know.
It's not that funny, Andrew.
There are 155 webisodes, and it was like they were being posted in real time while he was still on this journey, and I think like people could like interact with him, being like, "Oh, you should go here," or they could like say on message boards like, "I have a friend who's living here. You can go stay with them in Cuba,"
Wow.
or whatever the case was. So it was like an interactive kind of show, and he ended up visiting 16 countries, and this lasted 159 days, which
Wow.
is just a crazy commitment. And there was over 250 hours of film, and it got turned into an 11-part TV show on primetime on WGN America.
You know what? If I had won $1 million from The Amazing Race and had free time, that's what I would do. Like, I know I said I don't know how I'd feel about it, but if I had that time and money, I would probably do something like that.
Yeah, and these 11 episodes are currently on Amazon Prime for purchase, which I attempted to purchase episode 1 for 99 cents, but got declined because my billing information is not American, so
Yeah.
it didn't work. Unfortunate for that. But this actually went on for 3 seasons. Season 2 featured a contestant from Big Brother, and who was also later on The Amazing Race, Jeff Schroeder. And Season 3 featured Parvati Shallow from Survivor. And somebody actually compiled a playlist from her seasons of several clips. If you're interested in seeing that, I watched quite a few of it. It was interesting. And then Alex actually has another show as well, that I don't know if he's still doing it.
The college tour show, correct.
Yes.
Yeah, again, I didn't look into that as much, but he's
Yeah.
in his interviews, he did say that really, obviously, as you can tell from what we're saying, he's stayed in the TV world. He's worked in building these relationships with producers and people and developing these TV shows, which good for him. I think that's what him and kind of these winners of The Amazing Race in the early seasons are lucky to have, is that
Yeah.
the show was, at this point there's 30 some winners, but at that point there was 2. So he had a really good standing coming into these shows and building these connections and saying, well, let me stick around. I want to help you out, or I want to develop a new show. Like, he had a lot more, I think, leeway in terms of maybe you could say popularity, but also just connections.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because it was so much more of a big thing, and like people who were on these shows were so much more well known than they are now. But his show that he's hosting currently, I think it's still going on, is pretty much just him going around the United States and going to American universities to like give a full comprehensive look of what they're like for people who are trying to decide which university to go to.
Which is actually quite smart. We should do that for Canada.
We should.
I've been on so many university campuses this year. I feel like you and I we could find the stuff that needs to be said about these schools, you know?
It's a good concept, and the people want to know.
Well,
because I feel like
they're paying for an education.
Yeah, I feel like when people choose universities, they just kind of go off of vibes.
But sometimes they may have never even been to this school.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Chris and Alex as an Amazing Race team. Like you said before, they were just normal. I thought they were fine. They didn't really do anything spectacularly entertaining.
No, they didn't make great TV, but they were likable enough.
Yeah, and they had some interesting dynamics with their constant on-again, off-again alliance with Tara and Will and the whole Alex and Tara situation. But yeah, congrats to them on winning the Amazing Race Season 2.
Yeah, and obviously, as we said, Alex has done quite well. He's got a lot of ventures going on. Chris, on the other hand, seems like he's kept it quite private. Doesn't put a lot out there, which respect, but sounds like he still talks to Alex on a very regular basis.
Yes. Okay, so that concludes our cast analysis / discussion for Season 2. Now, do we want to go into some fun awards, favorites,
yeah, I think
categories?
we can wrap up the episode with a little bit of an award show. I like that. Our little award
show.
The Season 2 awards.
Yes.
So, Andrew, what was your favorite leg?
So, my favorite leg was the one where they went from Hong Kong to Australia. This leg, it was just like absolutely action-packed. It had my favorite moment of the season, which was the Danny and Oswald going shopping and like going and booking their own like private car and booking through a travel agency to get to Australia and then beating everybody.
Sorry, I just remembered earlier I had said that they had a rule, remember, that they...
Oh, yeah. That's what it was.
The rule about using a non-commercial.
Yes. Because they got a private BMW or something.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. And then going to Starbucks and getting their mocha frappuccinos. And then like that being contrasted with the other teams at the airport just frantically looking around for flights. Meanwhile, they're living large in Hong Kong. And then this also had my favorite task, which is probably a spoiler for another award, which was the Aussie slang roadblock, which tripped up a couple teams. There was some drama with that. It was the fun scavenger hunt task throughout Sydney. And it had also a good finish, which I think was pretty close between Blake and Paige and Tara and Will.
That's true. I forgot about the Aussie slang task. That was a good one. Because also the task itself tripped some people up and some people had to restart.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think just like Australia as a location was done really well also.
Interesting.
Yeah. And what would you say?
Now this might surprise you or it might not. Oh. I would probably have to go episode 9 in New Zealand. And I've broken it down into my favorite roadblock and detour. So roadblock obviously came from this, and it was the sheep herding task. I thought it was so cute. I thought it was so fun. And I just thought I would be amazing at it as well. So if I had to do a roadblock, if that's the kind of roadblock I would want to do, I would want to herd sheep in New Zealand.
Herd sheep.
My favorite detour, funnily enough, was the bungee jump one because it created such good room for conversation. And, it's really made me think about myself as an individual who could go on this race. And it's just made me more present in the mindset of thinking about what I'm willing to do to push my limits as a human being every day.
Wow. That's quite profound.
Yeah, exactly. So for that reason, I would say the bungee jumping task was probably one of my favorite detours. And I guess it's a given that my favorite location was New Zealand for those reasons, but also because I liked the camper vans. I liked that they had to drive basically the length of the whole country. And that these legs were really not airplane dependent, which I thought gave a different sense of urgency, as in it wasn't about who got on the flight first. It was about who could navigate the best and get somewhere the best.
Yes, I agree. And New Zealand was also just like very beautifully shot with the landscape.
Yes.
And something else I want to mention with the route they took this season is how extremely English dominant it was. So like they went to Brazil and Argentina, but then they went to South Africa, which is pretty Anglo dominant, and then also like Australia and New Zealand, and the States.
Yeah, that's true. Did you say your favorite destination already?
I said I said I really liked the way they did Australia.
Okay.
Although I'll have to look back. Hold on. Let me just take a little gander.
Because I know you said that your favorite leg was the Hong Kong Australia, but was that necessarily your favorite destination?
You know what? I think I'm not going to have to agree with you on the New Zealand. Although, you know what? I'm just going to say Australia just because it was different. Just because it's different from yours. I think they had really interesting tasks in Australia. Like they had the mining.
The mine and golf detour.
The mine and golf detour was really well done. Also, the boomerang task was interesting.
And did you say, I think you already said your favorite moment of the show, right?
Oh, yeah. Was the Danny and Oswald.
Which is so fair.
Shopping extravaganza. And yours?
I wrote just Gary quotes because you're going down.
Oh, man.
I feel like I'm going faster if I'm standing up.
Oh, that, yeah.
They made for such a fun time watching the show. And also just you and Ashley mistaking Peach for using a public restroom as having a bowel movement. Like, it's just too good. I can't help but bring it up again.
Yeah, well, I think your favorite moments stem from the podcast, because I remember last season you were saying that Frank and Margarita jumping the fence was your favorite moment, which is such like a random thing. I feel like most people wouldn't even note that as something to be considered.
But the jumping the fence thing, it's because they were just like, we're gonna have to jump the fence, like we have to. And it took so much effort for them to jump this fence, and I'm thinking
when they really didn't have to.
I'm thinking the crew setting up this race are not going to expect this sound, the audio operator and the camera operator to scale this massive metal fence, but they did it anyway. Anyway, I have one final question.
Yeah.
Who was your favorite guest?
Oh,
I'm kidding. I just wanted to see what your reaction would be.
That would be crazy.
I know. We would be starting drama. And we can't do that because some of our guests, wink, wink, are coming back.
For season 3.
Yes, indeed. Which
yeah,
we are.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed the guests. I think they were a good addition.
Yeah, if you really hate us having guests, let us know. We enjoy having guests. We enjoy having a fresh perspective. And if you don't enjoy, if you just like us that much that you would rather we don't have guests, let us know. Obviously, we are still going to have episodes just with us, but a fresh perspective is always good.
Absolute.
Yeah.
So speaking of season 3, what are you looking forward to the show implementing, or like any changes or steps forward or things you're hoping for with season 3?
I don't know. I think it's just everything's being fine-tuned and the tasks are getting better. The travel's becoming more it's less about the travel, they're giving them designated planes. I think I'm just looking forward to maybe a more positive tone to the season and the episodes than we saw in season 2. And again, that's specifically overshadowed by the fact that teams are characterized in a certain way. But what about you?
Yes, I agree. It's more of just a fine-tuning. I really want to see, like, we had some good detours this past season, but I want to see consistent good
You
detours.
want to see great detours.
I want to see great detours. We did not get
Why
that.
did you do a Frosted Flakes? Great.
I don't know. And then also, I'm just hoping to see some like new types of characters that maybe we haven't seen before. I love some kooky people. I want to see some more kooky people. That's all I have for what I'm looking forward to season 3. I'm just interested to see how the show will further progress.
Yes. Well, this has been quite a long episode, so we won't keep you much longer, but thank you for coming back. If you were awaiting our long 4-month hiatus, we have returned. I feel so cool being able to say I feel like I'm coming back from hiatus. I feel like I'm channeling my desire for One Direction to return from hiatus to be able to say that
Not this.
I've returned from a hiatus.
Well, we have the same cultural impact as them, so it's pretty much the same thing.
Exactly. So we're back.
Well,
we're better than ever, and we're ready to start season 3.
we are so ready to start season 3, and season 2 was great. High five. And we want to know what you guys think of season 2, and you can let us know at amazinggracerewind@gmail.com. If you want to follow us and keep up with us, you can do so at Amazing Grace Rewind on Instagram. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or share us with a friend.
Always appreciated.
We want to grow. Yes, we want to expand our audience, let them in, because we're changing lives here on the Amazing Race
We
Rewind.
are.
Jill had her life changed with the whole bungee jumping task. Maybe that could happen for someone special in your life.
Exactly. And I just want to thank everyone, too. Over the summer, while we were away, we surpassed 4,000 downloads, which is pretty amazing. So,
That's good
Yeah.
for us. Yeah. Wow, I didn't even realize.
yeah,
4,000. Next up, 40,000.
big dreams.
Big dreams.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. We will see you in the next episode.
We shall. Bye.
Bye.